What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F1 22 for My Team Career Mode, Season 2, Round number 13, the Singapore Grand Prix. Our first time in Singapore on this game because we didn't come here last season, so I'm excited to see what this one will have in store. In previous games, it's been very much a strategy race where, you know, in the previous ones where you had to use the tyres that you got through to Q3 on, it kind of pushed the top 10 into a 2-stop and gave people outside the top 10 on a 1-stop a better chance. But in this game, everybody tends to do a 1-stop most of the time anyway. But before we go into the race, we have a retirement announcement. Fernando Alonso is retiring at the end of Season 2. He will be finally retiring in Formula 1, so that is interesting news. It's going to leave a seat open at Alpine, and as we've seen, Alpine, I mean, they've not made the most, to be honest, of where they are. Looking now at R&D, they're right there with McLaren. As we know, Lando Norris, especially at McLaren, has been, I mean, he's had 2 wins this season. Alpine haven't even been on the podium yet this season, so they're going to want to be doing better here. I mean, they are the 5th quickest team, but like I said, they're right there with McLaren, and Lando, especially at McLaren, has been outperforming, I'd say, that car. Also, you saw in R&D, Red Bull and Ferrari are now right on top of each other. They're pretty much identical on R&D, and Mercedes are now right there as well. So could we have potentially 3 teams, and I guess Lando Norris, fighting for the win here? Could be an interesting one. But in Q1, sorry, we did manage to get through to Q2. However, didn't have the greatest run here, I'm gonna be honest. My lap was not great. My first lap, as you can see, I'm currently sitting P21 after my first lap, and although my second lap was a lot better than my first, still wasn't anywhere near as good as I expected, because Kevin Magnussen, my teammate, has gone P4 in Q1. That is, he has pulled out a ridiculous lap time. Our personnel upgrade for the simulator has come through for this race weekend, so that's increased the pace of my teammate. And Magnussen showing that that's made a big difference here, because we've been outperforming him in qualifying quite considerably so far this season. Well, in the few races that he's been on our team from the midway point of this season when we changed from Mick Schumacher. But yeah, he pulled out an amazing P4 in Q1. Of course, that is only Q1 though. Q2 comes around. Unfortunately, we don't make it through to Q3. Once again, wasn't really expecting to, because McLaren are pretty quick. The top 3 teams are well ahead of us. And the Alpines, although haven't been perhaps performing as well as they maybe should have been in comparison to McLaren and Lando Norris, they're still a decent way ahead of us, so it was going to be difficult for us to get into Q3. And this is a track that you very much need a good handling car here, but you do also need some top speed, because there's a lot of rather long straights. I think this track has 3 DRS zones, so it's one of those street tracks where, yes, it is quite a tight, twisty street track, but it also has a lot of fast sections. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of Baku in a lot of ways. I think this track may be a bit more technical than Baku on the whole, and it's quite a long lap here as well. But yeah, I do quite like Singapore as a track. It's a track that I enjoy driving. It's not one that I seem to be the quickest on compared to AI, and that seems to be the case in this game as well. But yeah, it's still a track that I do enjoy driving around. As we cross the line in Q2, we end up going P13, but the surprise of the session perhaps is Kevin Magnussen. He's not P4 this time, but he's P10. He gets through to Q3, but even crazier than that, P6, Alexander Albon in the Williams goes P6. He's into Q3, that's a big thing there. Stroll's knocked out in Q2, that's a bit of a surprise. But yeah, let's see what the race has in hold.
Here we go then, it's Formula 1 in Marina Bay once again, and welcome to all of you at home who join us today for this fascinating race around the baking hot but beautiful streets of Singapore. It's a 3.1 mile lap here at the Marina Bay Street Circuit, with 47% taken at full throttle. It's hot, humid and bumpy around the 13 lefts and 10 rights of mostly slow corners, but we should see speeds of up to 200 miles per hour along the Raffles Boulevard. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Lando Norris put in a fantastic lap yesterday, and he will start from pole position, with Charles Leclerc alongside. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Russell, Fernando Alonso, Kevin Magnussen and Sainz, Stroll, Shaw, Bottas and Alex Albon. They've taken a grid penalty. Tsunoda, Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo and Vettel. Mick Schumacher, Ocon. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Robert Schwartzman and Liam Lawson. Latifi, Hamilton, Verstappen and Guan Yu Zhou. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. A warm welcome to Natalie Pinkham, who is beside me in the commentary box today. Now, can I get your take on Max Verstappen? That was a great win in the last race. Can they keep that momentum going this weekend?
Well, there are never any guarantees in this business, but certainly the performance last time out will have boosted their confidence coming into this race.
Alright, so we're actually starting P8, as a lot of drivers take grid penalties. A little bit surprised about that. Usually, more drivers take grid penalties in Monza. They didn't really take many in Monza, and they've taken them all here instead. The big ones being, well, first of all, Alex Albon. Although he qualified P6, he's actually starting P10 because he's taken a grid penalty, so that's a bit unfortunate for him, but he's still in the top 10. Hamilton and Verstappen are down the back of the grid, so that's going to be interesting as well. See if they can make their way through the order. Lando Norris starts on pole position. Magnussen's now up into P5, so that's an amazing result for him, and we're P8. So we've got 2 cars in the top 10 for possibly the first time in this career mode, as we go to 5 red lights for the Singapore Grand Prix. They're on for quite a long time, but eventually they do come off. It's an okay start for us. I mean, we never get good starts in this game, so the fact that we've managed to just about hold position at the start is good, although Bottas is trying to get past us through the first tricky chicane section, but we're going to stay ahead of the Alfa Romeo as Stroll is getting past Sainz up ahead. So it's a good start from Lance Stroll, who got knocked out in Q2 with us, but has had a better start to this race because of other people having grid penalties, as we now head down this sort of straight into the next corner. Magnussen is battling up ahead, and actually I think made a little bit of contact, but I think he's okay. Stroll is now going for a move on Magnussen. They're side by side up ahead. We're just sitting back behind Sainz, who I think is going to be a little bit annoyed here because he's one of the drivers who's also taken a grid penalty, and he's lost a position to Stroll at the start, so that is not what Sainz is going to want to do, especially on a track like this that is so difficult to overtake on. Albon gets past Bottas behind us as well, so he's up into P9, showing that he still has good pace in that Williams, so he could be on for a good result today. As we continue on behind these cars, behind Sainz, behind Magnussen, and just looking at what we can do here. This is a very difficult track to overtake on. You've got all these big straights, but you've also got a lot of slow corners, and you've got to get a good run out of the corners to really go for a move at the end of one of these straights. So it does prove pretty difficult, but we're just going to continue on here and just try and get our head down and get into a good rhythm on this track, because that's the main thing with this track. You've got to get into a good rhythm, and at the moment we're doing pretty well. Charles Leclerc sets the fastest lap. He's leading the way, so he's obviously got Lando Norris into turn, well, not necessarily into turn 1, but at the start of this race. So Leclerc leads the way. Looking at the back of the grid, Lewis Hamilton going for a big dive on a lot of cars into turn 1 at the start of this race. He has taken a grid penalty, started P20, with Max Verstappen starting P21, and he still sits P21. He hasn't had a good start, Verstappen, as Hamilton battles with, I believe that is Robert Schwartzman in the Haas through the next section, and I'm not sure if he's got the move done just yet. Yes, he has just about got that move done. He's now got Albon and I think that's Vettel ahead battling, as Liam Lawson actually has a little look at the inside of Hamilton but can't make anything work. Max Verstappen then onto lap 3 is going to now start making moves. He already dispatched Nicholas Latifi. He's now going to try and dispatch Robert Schwartzman as they go side by side through this section. Schwartzman has shown some pretty good racing in a Haas that is, I'm going to be honest, not doing well at the moment. They were a midfield car, but now they seem to be creeping a little bit further towards the back of the field, but Verstappen does eventually manage to get past. And on the next lap, he's got Liam Lawson in the Aston Martin, probably the slowest car on the grid, at least on R&D. Aston Martin is the slowest. You've kind of got Aston Martin on their own at the back, And then Williams, Haas and AlphaTauri are all very close to each other up ahead, but Aston Martin are kind of the outliers at the back of the grid. But Lawson's managing to hold on here. He's actually doing a pretty good job, and this is going to be getting Verstappen rather frustrated, especially with Hamilton running off as he goes and does a bit of a switchback as they go round. He goes round the outside of the next corner. Max Verstappen, he's getting aggressive here. He wants to make up positions, and he's up ahead of Liam Lawson, now going to try and chase down Lewis Hamilton, who's probably going to be the main race for Verstappen this race. As we continue on, still kind of stuck behind Sainz and Magnussen here, Stroll has managed to get a bit of a gap up ahead, so Magnussen is now kind of leading this train of himself, Sainz, myself. Albon is a little bit further behind me. We're just about managing to pull away from him and Bottas, but yeah, it's getting interesting here, because although Sainz is a lot quicker in that Ferrari, it's proving difficult to overtake. As Yuki Tsunoda goes too wide into turn 1, Gasly has a look on his teammate, but actually can't make a move, and is instead getting under pressure by Mick Schumacher in the other Haas. And Schumacher, they're going to go side by side through that final corner there. Schumacher, though, goes back into place, but then has DRS and has the run on Gasly up into this next sector. They're going to go side by side through this section right here. You've got Sebastian Vettel sniffing around in the background there as well, as these guys are still side by side. Great racing between Gasly and Schumacher here, as we have a pretty awesome helicopter shot of these two. Schumacher gets a better run out of the next corner, but then Gasly gets the second wind and is still there, runs Schumacher a little bit wide. I think they might be going side by side into this very tight sector here. A little bit of contact from Schumacher, and in the end he has to give in. Gasly stays ahead, but that was an awesome little battle there towards the back of the field. George Russell finds himself in P3. Lando Norris up ahead in P2. Charles Leclerc is dominating this race at the moment. He is way out in the lead. But then you've got Lando Norris P2, Russell P3, Fernando Alonso up there in P4, and Lance Stroll hanging on to the back of these guys in P5. So it's a close battle from P2 to P5, but Leclerc is way out ahead in the lead. The other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, I think he's getting ever frustrated as he just cannot find a way past Kevin Magnussen. My teammate is doing a great job of keeping this Ferrari behind, and I'm doing a good job of keeping with these two as well and pulling away from Albon behind. So we do have more pace than Albon in this race, and that also shows that Magnussen isn't slowing me down here. He's also quicker than Albon. The fact that we're managing to pull away, so things are going well. Things are not going well though for Pierre Gasly, who has an engine failure. His engine goes up in smoke. He's going to pull over to a rather vulnerable part of the track, and that's going to bring out the safety car because he's not in a great place, and it works out pretty damn well for Magnussen, for Sainz and for myself. As the safety car comes out just as we're about to come up to the pits, we're going to do a double stack here because I think that's just going to be the way to go. Magnussen comes in. It's a bit of a slow stop for him, to be honest, which is going to screw us over even more, but we're onto a set of hard compound tyres, and that should be our last stop, our one and only stop of this race. It's actually a pretty quick pit stop, other than, you know, having to wait around for Magnussen. The actual stop itself is pretty damn good. But yeah, we continue on. The leader though of Charles Leclerc had already passed the pits by the time the safety car came out, but next lap around he is going to come in for the stop. He's not going to lose his opportunity, but Lando Norris, Russell, Alonso and Stroll are going to continue on. They are not going to come into the pits, which is a big mistake in my opinion. Norris now leads the race, but he still has to come in, and the three cars behind him all have to come in for a pit stop at some point in this race. And I mean, we're close enough to the time when we would have been changing for hards. I mean, we've come in a little bit earlier, a couple of laps earlier than expected, but still I thought it was the decent thing to do, the sensible thing to do, to come in for a pit stop. But apparently the leaders don't think that, as we're trying to make our way past Bottas. We've lost a couple of positions in that pit stop because of having to double stack with Magnussen, but I thought it was the way to go, as we're going to go for a dive up the inside of Bottas, make quick work of him on this opening lap of the restart, and we're up now into P10, so we're still in the points, and these top four have to come into the pit, and a couple of laps after, well, I think it's actually the lap that the lap after the safety car came in, first lap of green flag running again, the top four come in, so that is an absolute disaster.
On Magnussen for you. Okay,
It's a disaster for the top 4, but it's also potentially a disaster for Magnussen, who now, with those top 4 coming in, is sitting in P2. Kevin Magnussen is second in this race, but Carlos Sainz now is going to go for a move on Magnussen because Magnussen has an issue with his car. This is a terrible time for this to happen. He DNF'd last time out because of a mechanical failure, and he could be retiring here as well, or at least falling down the order as Sainz gets past him. But Magnussen still sitting in P3, still in a podium position. We though get a great run off that corner and get alongside Daniel Ricciardo with DRS down into the next one, but we're boxed in by Alexander Albon, who's in P4. Let me just remind you as well, Albon in a Williams is in P4. We are definitely battling for a podium position here today, which is not what I expected going into this race. But at the moment, we're having a ding-dong battle with Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, the driver who denied us our first potential podium a couple of rounds ago in the Netherlands. We managed to get past him, but it's Magnussen still sitting in P3, but Albon is looking quicker with that issue for Magnussen. He's looking for a move up the inside off this straight, and Alexander Albon, as they go side by side through the next corner, finds himself in P3 in a Williams. Yes, this is happening. It's crazy that we are here going for a potential podium, but the fact that Alexander Albon in a Williams is currently in a podium position legitimately is honestly bonkers, and just shows what a mess up Norris, Russell, Alonso and Stroll have made by not coming in under the safety car. We're now trying to make quick work of our teammate because he has an issue. So although he's done an amazing job in this race, and honestly, this was looking like definitely a points finish, potentially a podium finish for Kevin Magnussen, it's not going to be because his issue is causing him to fall down the order. Lewis Hamilton still trying to make his way through the grid. I think he's now battling with the other half of Mick Schumacher as they go side by side through turn 2, turn 3 there, and Hamilton though gets ahead of Schumacher up another position, and we are now in P4, but we've got quite a big gap to Albon up ahead. We lost a couple of seconds battling with our teammate, and we're going to have to try and make that time up, and it's going to be rather difficult because Albon is actually showing some pretty good pace now that he knows what position he is and what could be for him and Williams in this race. He's putting his foot down and really going quick. And we also have Daniel Ricciardo behind us putting pressure on. He is a little bit quicker than us, so that is going to be interesting for the rest of this race. Magnussen though is just still falling further and further down the order. This is awful stuff to see considering what could have been for him in this race. He's overtaken by Ocon. He's then not quite overtaken by Verstappen, but he's been given wing damage. Verstappen went from a bit of a kamikaze move, got wing and has given Magnussen wing damage, so that's now going to fall Magnussen out of the points, and it's going to go from an amazing race for Magnussen to a pretty terrible one. But you know what, it's not his fault. I'm happy with how Magnussen did today. Now George Russell is going for a move on Lando Norris. These guys now pretty much fighting for the wooden spoon. Not even that, because I don't even think they're in the points anymore after the terrible strategy that their teams put in place for them, or maybe the drivers decided they didn't want to come in. Either way, drivers that should have been 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th, well actually even, yeah, no, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th would have been correct. They are now outside the points, so terrible stuff for them, but it's good for us. We're now right on the back of Alexander Albon, but we've got Ricciardo still right behind us as well. But Albon is proving very difficult to get past. He's defending very well, and it is just so difficult to overtake on this track. But here we go, next couple of laps around, lap 26 of 31. We've got a good run on Albon. We're using a lot of ERS. We're going to go to the outside of this next corner, round the outside. He tries to defend, a little bit of contact, no damage for either of us, thankfully. But we're up into P3. We've denied Albon and Williams a podium here, but it could mean the first podium for us in this whole career mode, not just this season, but this whole career mode. This could be our first podium as Hamilton and Verstappen now battle. Verstappen was ahead of Hamilton, but on the second to last lap, Hamilton has managed to get back past Verstappen, and I think these guys are actually fighting over P9. Hamilton currently P9, Verstappen P10, but we are P3 as Charles Leclerc crosses the line to win. Sainz comes home in second for a Ferrari 1-2 here, but we're going to come home for P3. It's our first ever podium in F1 22. This was an absolutely bonkers race with just what happened with the strategy. Gasly stopping on track just completely changed up what could have been quite a boring race. We get our first podium in Formula 1. It's what could have been for Kevin Magnussen, but it's a good race altogether.
It's never easy to make it across the finish line here in Singapore, but they've done so with some style here today to take a remarkable victory. So, Natalie, what do you think helped them deliver this result?
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
Here come our winners now. A thrilling race and a tremendous effort by Ferrari. Their history is well known, so it's no surprise to fans the world over to see them come out on top once again.
So Charles Leclerc leads a Ferrari 1-2 in Singapore with Carlos Sainz coming home second. Good result from him considering where he started, but for us, it's pretty damn amazing. P3, our first ever podium, Mazda's first ever podium in Formula 1. It's come in such a crazy circumstance where we didn't have an amazing qualifying. Our teammate had a great qualifying, and honestly, I think Magnussen would have been able to hold on to at least P3 in this race if he didn't have that mechanical failure. I would have been happy to let him have the P3 in this race, but unfortunately for him it's P21. He fell right to the back of the grid after the issue with his car and the front wing damage, so really unfortunate for Magnussen. I really feel for him. We end up P9 now in the Drivers' Championship, level on points with Alonso and Esteban Ocon behind us, and Daniel Ricciardo only 1 point ahead of us up ahead. Alexander Albon moves up to P12, P13 in the championship, scoring a total of 12 points in this race for P4 for Williams. It wasn't a podium for Williams and Albon, but P4 still is an amazing result for that team, and that really boosts them up the order. They go from, I think, being P10 to now P8 in the Constructors' Championship. Alfa Romeo move up to P7 with a good result from Bottas, and Haas and AlphaTauri move down to P9 and 10 respectively. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.